everyone, this is Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to make our brand new pattern release, the Spring Morning Headband. Now I decided to call it the Spring Morning Headband because it's a little bit wider than a regular headband, but it's not as wide as an ear warmer, and it's the perfect headband if you like to go out in the morning, walk your dogs, or take a jog. This is the perfect size headband, and if your ears get a little chilly, you can always just pull it down over your ears. This is a free crochet pattern on my blog, and you can find that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. Now the neat thing about this pattern is it can be made in any size for any size head. Now the pattern on the blog is written for a 20-inch head, and I'll show you in just a little bit how to adjust it so it can fit a big head or a teeny tiny head. So what you're going to need to make one of our spring morning headbands is you're going to need 2 colors of worsted weight number 4 yarn. Now you can also make this in cotton, which is a really great idea. You can use peaches and cream, sugar and cream. I love this cotton, or Red Heart's new cotton smoothie will work just fine if you want a little bit cooler headband. And it's also great if you're a runner. That way that headband can absorb some of the sweat. The pattern is written for worsted weight number 4 yarn, and this is Red Heart Super Saver in just a lipstick pink, and I think this is just a grape purple. These are some older yarns that I have on hand, and I bought them a few years ago, but you can use any worsted weight number 4 yarns that you want. Just make sure you use 2 colors, because if you only use one, that flower will not pop out. All right, so we're going to be stitching today with our H hook, and the H hook is a 5.00 millimeter H hook. You'll need a needle for weaving in your ends, and of course you'll need your scissors. We're going to begin making the band for the headband first, and no matter what size you're making, you'll start the same way. So we're going to make our slip knot, and then we're going to chain 4. We're going to place a single crochet. Whoops, my tape measure's in the way. We are going to need that in a minute. We're going to begin with placing a single crochet in the second chain from the hook. This is our first chain. Here's our second, so we'll go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through both of those. And then we'll place a single crochet in the next 2 chains. This will give us 3 single crochets because we started in the second chain from the hook. We're going to chain 1 and turn. Now for the band of the headband, we're going to be stitching in the back loops only. If you look at your work, you'll see there's loops on this side and loops on this side. We're going to be stitching only in these back loops. So we'll put our hook through the back loop only and stitch a single crochet. And we'll do that in those 3 stitches. Chain 1 and turn. Now our chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so we'll be stitching in that first single crochet of each row, and for the band we're going to be continuing to be stitching in the back loops only. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch in that first back loop and then the next 2. Chain 1 and turn, and you'll begin to see that there is ridges and dips, and that's what makes the headband nice and stretchy. So we're going to continue stitching 1 single crochet in each single crochet, working in the back loops only, chain 1 and turn. Now I want to talk to you about size. Move that out of the way. 3 rows of what we just completed measures 1 inch. So we're making a 20-inch headband. So we're going to need to stitch 60 rows. And so what you're going to need to do is measure your head and decide what size you need to make. Now remember, this is a stretchy band, and if your head is, say, 22 inches, you might want to go with the 20-inch, subtract 2 inches or maybe 1, depends on how tightly you like to wear your headbands. But remember, if you make it too big, it's going to slip off your head. So just for reference, and so you know how many rows, 3 rows equal 1 inch. And this is the rows that we're doing here. I've got 4 done here, and I'm going to continue for the 20-inch headband to stitch 1 single crochet in each single crochet, working in the back loops only, for a total of 60 rows. Chain 1 and turn. I finished my 60 rows, and what we're going to do next is don't cut your yarn. We're going to put the 2 ends together and make sure that you didn't twist your band. Alright, so we're going to go right in the first stitch on this side and the first one on this side, and we're going to stitch a single crochet, and we'll do that in the next 3 or the next 2, so we have a total of 3 single crochets on the end, and that stitched them together. And when you pull it out, it lays nice and flat and it blends right in with our band. Alright, now we're going to change colors, and we'll weave this in later, don't worry about that. But we're not going to cut our pink yarn, or whatever yarn you're using for your first color. We're going to go ahead and join in our second color, snug that down, and we're just going to let that hang on the back. We'll chain 1 with our new color, which I'm using purple. Make sure everything is snug down tight, and you don't want that yarn to get caught, so just move it over with your finger. And what we're going to do is we're going to place 1 single crochet in the end of each of these rows. Now when you look at your rows, you'll see that you have a ridge and a dent, a ridge and a dent, and make sure that you get a stitch in each one of those, because where the dent is here is where you have a ridge on the other side. So what we'll do is we'll go right in this end of this first ridge, just go right in there and stitch a single crochet. Then we'll go in the indentation, or the dent, and stitch a single crochet. We'll go right in the top of the ridge, and because I stitched 60 rows, I need to have 60 single crochets around. However many rows you stitched for the size you're making, you need to have that many single crochets on this row. We're stitching 1 single crochet in the end of each row, 1 in the ridge row and 1 in the dent, all the way around. We'll do this all the way around, and when we get back over here, we'll join to that first single crochet. So as you can see, I've placed a single crochet in each of the ends of the rows, making sure I only have 60. And now we're going to join. Now don't join to the chain 1. We want to join to the first single crochet because we don't want to accidentally add a stitch. and we're going to join with a slip stitch. So we'll go in the top of that single crochet, pull up a loop, and then pull that loop through the loop on our hook. Snug that down, and now we're going to cut the purple or the second color off. We're going to join the pink yarn or our first color back in. Grab the right string, snug that down, and we'll weave those in later. Now we're going to chain 3, and this chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. And what we're going to do on this row is we're going to stitch a double crochet in each of those single crochets around. So since our chain 3 counted as our first double crochet, we're going to go into the next stitch and stitch a double crochet. Yarn over, go in the next double crochet and pull up a loop. Yarn over, go through the next 2, yarn over, and go through the last 2. And we'll do this in each single crochet all the way around. So 1 double crochet in each of the single crochets, working all the way around our headband, and then when we get back around, we're going to join to the top of the chain 3 because our chain 3 counted as our first double crochet. Now I do want to talk to you about being careful not to add stitches. Sometimes when I'm doing these like this, all of a sudden I've got 1 too many or 1 less stitch, and I don't know how I did it. And usually it's at the join. So make sure you count your stitches around and that you join in the proper place. Like the last row where I said don't join in the single, or don't join in the chain 1, but join in the single, because that's one place where we could accidentally add a stitch. If you accidentally add a stitch, it's relatively easy to fix. I mean, it's a small project, so you can pull it out and fix it. But boy, is that irritating when we have to do that. And we all do it. Don't panic thinking you're the only one who does it. Every crocheter at one time or another has had to frog something. And frogging is when we just pull out the stitches because it sounds like ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. Because we're ripping it out. All right, so let me show you how that's looking. We've got that nice accent row of single crochet in there. And now we're stitching a row of double crochet all the way around, and then when we get back around, we'll join to the top of our chain 3. So as you can see, I finished that row around. I'm going to join to the top of the chain 3 with a slip stitch, and then I'm going to chain 3 because we're going to begin with more double crochets. Now this row is where we're going to do the bottom petals of our flower. So I've got my purple ready to go, and what we're going to do, no matter what size, you'll be doing this particular portion the same until we get to the back part of the row, and of course you'll have less stitches, and you'll see that when we get there. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to double crochet in the first 15 double crochets. All right, so here's our chain 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, whoops, 14, and 15. All righty, so now I'm going to join in my second color. So we're going to leave the pink still attached. We're not going to cut it. We'll put a loop through of our purple and snug that down. And now what we're going to do is in this stitch that we just stitched, we're going to make what I call a cluster stitch. And so what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over, we're going to go in that stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and only go through the first 2 loops. We're going to yarn over, go in that same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and only go through the first 2 loops. And now we're going to do that again. Yarn over, go in the same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and only go through the first 2 loops. So it looks like we have 3 stitches and 4 loops. So what we're going to do is yarn over and go through all 4 of those loops. That's our first petal. We're going to chain 1. We chained 1. We're going to skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to stitch another cluster in the next stitch. So yarn over, go in the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, only go through the first 2. Yarn over, go in that same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and only go through the first 2. And we'll do that again. Now we'll yarn over and go through all 4 of those loops. That's the 2 bottom petals of our flower, or like on the green one, it looks like a clover or shamrock. All right, so now we're just going to let our purple yarn hang. We're going to grab back in our pink and make sure everything's snug down tight. I'm going to pull the right string here. And then we're going to go right in that same stitch and stitch a double crochet. And that's the way that that should look. And then we'll stitch 1 double crochet in each stitch around. Now, if you made your headband bigger or smaller, this is where the difference is, because you'll have more stitches around. But either way, you need to place 1 double crochet in each double crochet around, and then when we get back around, we'll join to the top of this chain 3. See, those 2 bottom stitches weren't too hard. We'll come back around and then we'll stitch the 2 top stitches. All right, 1 double crochet in each double crochet around. I completed the rest of the way around that double crochet, and now I'm going to join to the top of the chain 3 with a slip stitch. And then I'm going to chain 3. Now what we're going to do next is similar to what we did on this row. We have our chain 3, and then we're going to stitch 1 double crochet in these next 15 double crochets. And again, no matter if you made your headband bigger or smaller, this beginning portion is exactly the same, because we want it to line up so that we can put the top petals on our flower. Okay, just a few more double crochets and we'll be back to the flower. Alrighty, so here's our last double crochet. We're going to join the purple or whatever color you're using for your flower next. Snug that down, and again, leave that pink yarn attached. And what we're going to do is we're going to place our petals in the single crochet that's between the petals from the previous row. So we're going to yarn over. I'm going to go right in that single crochet and stitch a cluster stitch like we did on the 2 petals for the bottom of the flower. And this is a little bit snug, but we want it to be nice and snug so it looks like a pretty flower. All right, so there's my first cluster. I'm going to chain 2. So I stitched my first cluster and chain 2. And now we're going to stitch another cluster stitch right in that same single crochet. There we go. So there's the flower. We're going to bring our pink yarn back in. There we go. Snug that down, and we're going to go ahead and cut our purple yarn or whatever color you're using for your flower. And then what we're going to do is just place 1 double crochet in each double crochet around, just like we did on the previous row. Now, if you look at your flower, it may look a little tight up here, but don't worry. When we come around, we're going to put a double crochet in that center right there, and it's going to help it stand out and look like a pretty flower. I'm just going to place 1 double crochet in each double crochet around. Then I'll join to the top of that chain 3. So again, I finished stitching all the way around with my double crochets. We're going to join to the top of the chain 3 and chain 3. Now we're going to stitch those 15 double crochets till we reach the flower. Whoops. So I've stitched across those 15 stitches. And now what we're going to do is we're going to place 1 stitch in the top of that first cluster stitch. We're going to stitch a stitch in between in that chain 2 space. Then we'll stitch 1 double crochet in the top of the next cluster stitch. And this is just to even it out, and it's also going to help that flower kind of pucker out just a little bit. All right, so now we're going to stitch right in that next double crochet, and then we're going to stitch a double crochet in each double crochet around, just like we did on our previous rows. So again, I finished stitching around. I joined to the top of my chain 3 with a slip stitch, and now I'm going to join my purple color back in, leave my pink one attached, and I'm going to do another row of the single crochet like we did down here. So we're going to do a row of single crochet, and then we're going to do the ending band or the back of the band, and then we'll be finished. So 1 single crochet in each of the double crochets around. I like to try to do this stitch a little bit snugger so that I get a nice even row, and it also helps it to just kind of come in just a little bit. So I'm stitching it just a little bit tighter than I usually do. So I'm placing 1 single crochet in each of the double crochets around. I finished my row of single crochets. I joined to my first single crochet with a slip stitch, and I'm going to cut my yarn. These last 2 rows are done in our main color. So I'm going to bring the pink one back up, snug down that purple one, and I'm only going to chain 2. And that's because we're going to place 1/2 double crochet in each of the single crochets around. To stitch a 1/2 double crochet, you yarn over, go in the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and then pull that loop through all 3 of those loops. So 1/2 double crochet in each of the single crochets around. And when we get back around, we'll join to the top of that chain 2. So I have stitched 1/2 double crochet in each of the single crochets around. I'm going to join to the top of that chain 2 with a slip stitch and chain 2. Now this last row we're going to be doing what's called front post 1/2 double crochet or 1/2 double crochet front post. And this is going to give us a similar look that we have down here with the ridges. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around the post of the 1/2 double crochet. So I yarn over, I go around the post and finish my 1/2 double crochet. And then the next 1/2 double crochet, I'm just going to stitch a regular 1/2 double crochet. And this is what we'll do all the way around. We'll stitch a front post, 1/2 double crochet, then we'll stitch a regular 1/2 double crochet in the next stitch, alternating back and forth with front post 1/2 double crochet and then the regular old 1/2 double crochet. And you'll see that it forms ridges that look similar to what we did down here. Now this side is the front and this side is the back. All right, so 1/2 double crochet, then a front post 1/2 double crochet in the next stitch. And if you've never done a front post 1/2 double crochet, this is a great place to practice. And we'll continue this all the way around. We'll join to the top of our chain 2 because we're doing 1/2 double crochets, and then we'll tie off and weave in our ends. And we're going to have a few because we changed colors a little bit, but that's why I had you never cut off your pink, because the least amount of weave-ins that we have to do, the better. So as you can see, it's making those nice ridges so that the headband stays put on our head. So we'll continue working this all the way around and we'll join to the top of the chain 2. I completed this 1/2 double crochet, front post 1/2 double crochet alternating row. There we go. I joined to the top of my chain 2 and I'm going to cut off my yarn because we're done. All right, going to tie that off, and then we need to weave in these ends. And I just thread it on a needle and take it to the back. One thing to remember when using more than one color is try to stay in your color so that it doesn't show through. Now sometimes you might get a little show through, but for the most part you want to try to keep it neat and tidy. And when I'm stitching through, I try to go through the fibers of the yarn and through stitches, not through holes. And someone asked me the other day, how come I don't just tie a bunch of knots? And the thing about yarn is with where the knots come undone sometimes. And there are moments when I do a knot, like maybe on a pom-pom attachment or something. There might be a time when I do. So I'm not going to say I never do knots, but I try not to, because I know that it'll hold better if I just weave it in, going back and forth through the stitches and the fibers of the yarn. All right, let me get this last one here. There we go. We'll just stitch it in there one way, the other, and then we'll just clip that off. So my ends are all tidied up and my headband is ready to be worn. Now this one is made to look like a flower, but if you make it in green like this one, you can add a little stem and it looks like a clover. And of course this one I did in these bright colors. And this is the way that you make my spring morning headband.